Good morning, everyone. It is currently 4 a.m. on Sunday, November 3rd. I still can't sleep. My schedule is still off kilter just a wee bit, but I wanted to take a moment um, to thank everyone for their time reading the blog, the encouragement that I received, the comments that were left. I greatly appreciate it very much. And I am going to continue with this blog because I hate to say it, this was only my intro to Australia. I am going back as soon as possible. Um, 5 weeks only scratches the surface, and there's so much more to explore, so many more mountain roads to take. And yeah, so I'll definitely be going back. So I wanted to take a minute and talk about the impact of the Snowy River. That was my day 5, I think, of being on the road, and I had the honor of riding with Graham and Katrina through the national park up to the Snowy, and I got to see it in its might. And I once again got to see it on my last ride of the season, where the hydro dam is. It's absolutely stunning. So let me back up a bit and tell you the why. In 1982, a movie came out called The Man from Snowy River, and this was my first introduction to Australia, to the accents, um, and to parts of the country. Now, again, 1982, I'm a wee one, and it was probably later when I actually saw it, but I remember it in such crisp detail, young sponge like mine, totally absorbing it. And I was fascinated with horses as a child. I think most girls are. And I was graced one when I was 12. Thank you, Mom and Dad. And it's a passion that never dies, even though I traded my 1 horsepower for multi horsepower on the motorcycles. Um, they're still a beautiful creature, and I admire them. So, The Man from Snowy River is actually a poem by Banjo Paterson. It was written in 1895. The movie has embellished this poem. It's not very long. It gives the stockman a name, Jim Craig, and puts in a romance into it, which is very beautiful. It's a great movie for the 1980s. It's a great movie, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, you can see it on the Disney Plus channel. Not that I'm plugging Disney. I'm just making a comment. So that being said, I wanted to read you The Man from Snowy River, and this is my 4th attempt at this. So if I screw up this time, it's staying unedited. So, so with that being said, I'm going to put on my stockman hat and let's tell a story. The Man from Snowy River. There was movement at the station, for word had passed around that the colt from Old Regret had got away and joined the wild bush horses. He was worth £1,000. So all the cracks had gathered to the fray. All of the tried and noted riders from the stations near and far had mustered at the homestead overnight. For the bushmen love hard riding where the wild bush horses are, and the stock horse snuffs the battle with delight. There was Harrison, who had made his pile when Pardon won the cup, the old man with hair as white as snow, but few could ride beside him when his blood was fairly up. He would go wherever horse and man could go, and Clancy from the Overflow came down to lend a hand. No better horseman ever held the reins, for never horse could throw him while the saddle's girths would stand. He'd learnt to ride while droving on the plains. And one was there, a stripling on a small and weedy beast. He was something like a racehorse undersized, with a touch of Timor pony, 3 parts thoroughbred at least, and such as are by mountain horsemen prized. He was hard and tough and wiry, just the sort that won't say die. There was courage in his quick, impatient tread, and he bore the badge of gameness in his bright and fiery eye, and the proud and lofty carriage of his head. But still so slight and weedy, one would doubt his power to stay, and the old man said, "That horse will never do. For a long and tiring gallop, lad, you'd better stop away. Those hills are far too rough for such as you." So he waited, sad and wistful. Only Clancy stood his friend. I think we ought to let him come, he said. I'll warrant he'll be with us when he's wanted at the end, for both his horse and he are mountain bred. He hails from Snowy River, up by Kosciuszko side, where the hills are twice as steep and twice as rough, where a horse's hoofs strike firelight from the flint stones every stride. The man that holds his own is good enough, and the Snowy River riders on the mountains make their home. I've never seen many horsemen since I first commenced to roam, but nowhere yet such a horseman have I seen. So he went. They found the horses by the big mimosa clump. They raced away towards the mountain's brow, and the old man gave his orders. Boys, go at them from the jump. No use for fancy riding now. And Clancy, you must wheel them, and try to wheel them to the right, for never yet was rider that could keep the mob in sight once they gained the shelter of those hills. So Clancy rode to wheel them. He was racing on the wing where the best and boldest riders take their place. And he's raced his stock horse past them and made the ranges ring with the stock whip as he met them face to face. And they halted for a moment while he swung the dreaded lash, but they saw their well-loved mountain full in view. And they charged beneath the stock whip with a sharp and sudden dash, and off the mountain scrub they flew. Then fast the horsemen followed, where their gorges deep and black resounded with the thunder of their tread, and the stock whips woke the echoes, and they fiercely answered back. From cliffs and crags they beetled overhead, and upward, ever upward, the wild horses held their way, where mountain ash and kurrajong grew wide. And the old man muttered fiercely, we may bid the mob good day. No man can hold them down the other side. When they reached the mountain summit, even Clancy took a pull. It well might make the boldest hold their breath. The wild hop scrub grew thickly, and hidden ground was full of wombat holes, and any slip was death. But the man from Snowy River let the pony have his head, and he swung the stock whip round and gave a cheer as he raced down the mountains like a torrent down its bed, while the others stood and watched with very fear. He sent the flint stones flying, but the pony kept his feet. He cleared the fallen timber in stride, and the man from Snowy River never shifted in his seat. It was grand to see the mountain horseman ride through the stringy barks and saplings on the rough and broken ground. Down the hillside as at a racing pace he went, and he never drew the bridle till he landed safe and sound at the bottom of the terrible descent. He was right among the horses as they galloped the further hill, and the watchers on the mountain standing mute saw him ply the stock whip fiercely. He was right among them still, as he raced down the clearing in pursuit. Then they lost him for a moment where the two mountain gullies met in the ranges, but a final glimpse revealed on a dim and distant hillside the wild horses racing yet, with this man from Snowy River on their heels. And he ran them single-handed till their sides were white with foam, and he followed like a bloodhound on their track till they halted, cowed and beaten. Then he turned their heads for home, and alone and uninsistent brought them back. But his hardy pony could not scarcely raise a trot. He was blood from hip to shoulder from the spur, but his pluck was still undaunted, and his courage fiery hot, for never yet was a mountain horse a cur. And down by Kosciuszko, where the pine-clad ridges raise their torn and rugged battlements on high, where the air is clear as crystal, and the white stars fairly blaze at midnight in the cold and frosty sky, and where the overflow, the reed beds sweep and sway to the breezes, and the rolling plains are wide, the man from Snowy River is a household word today, and the stockmen tell the story of his ride. This poem had a huge impact on me, as I mentioned several times now, as I'm sitting at the pub with a pint. And I wanted to share it to you, and hopefully I was able to inflect the meaning of it. Again, having watched the movie as a child, it was a fascinating movie. A movie of a young man that had to become a man very quickly. So thank you again for your support, and keep an eye on the blog because I'm going back pretty soon, that's for sure. Peace and love. Goodbye.